I think it's very important that we acknowledge that a very big responsibility that companies have is that they're working with human resources. We're not machines. So we need to acknowledge that that is a factor and it variates the results that we may have with our teams. So it's important to address that.
Welcome to the Hired Hub podcast, your ultimate guide to mastering the complexities of remote work and pushing your career forward.
Whether you're tuning in from the busy streets of Latin America or any corner of the globe, we're here to give you tools and insights to succeed in today's dynamic job market. I'm your host, Gaby Morales.
And I am your co-host, Jess Torres. If you're a recent graduate eager to leave your mark or a seasoned pro looking to redirect your career, you can join us as we explore the endless possibilities of remote work and career growth.
Get ready to unlock your full potential with the Hired Hub podcast. Picture this. You wake up, grab your coffee, and start your workday without the need to commute.
It sounds perfect, right? But remote work isn't all easy. It brings its own challenges, like feeling isolated and staying motivated.
The psychological impact of working from home is complex and affects us in many ways. We're here with you on this journey because we understand these struggles.
We want to clarify that we're not experts in this field, nor are we psychologists or psychiatrists, but we are passionate journalists who love to research.
And that's why we're dedicating this episode to exploring the mental and emotional dynamics of remote work so you can navigate this landscape with confidence and support.
Now, let's dive in and start by sharing some of our personal experiences with remote work. Gaby, what do you find or what you found to be the most challenging aspect of working from home?
For me, at the very beginning, it was focusing, right? But with time, it's been the part of the isolation, what you said just at the beginning. Since you're working from home, you're really not socializing with a lot of people on a physical basis, on a one-on-one basis. And with time, that becomes straining because you lose your social abilities, your social skills, your social battery. Sometimes I'm in like one-on-one meetings. Well, not meetings. I'm like with my friends, and my social battery just dies, and I'm like, I want to turn off my camera, and I'm in front of them.
Oh my God, I can relate.
Yeah, but it's really that. I think that has been the biggest struggle, and the work-life balance part where you're home so often that you can be, if you're not proactive and you're not really like doing it deliberately, you can spend 1 or 2 months in your house, inside your house without seeing other faces. And that has a toll because as human beings, we are social creatures. Like we need to socialize. There's an emotional need for it. There's a mental need to socialize. And when you stop doing that, it gets tough. And then you have meetings, you have like my work particularly, I still have a lot of meetings with real people, though virtually, but it's still not the same. Yeah. So yeah, I feel like that has been that challenge has, maintained in time. At the beginning, it was focused, like I said, and I still have some points. I live alone, and every time that I have visitors, and there's someone in my area that is not working, I have a struggle. I really struggle to focus there. So that part, but that I have it under control. It's pretty much the isolation part. What about you?
For me, I think it would be monotony.
Okay.
Like I hate doing every day always the same thing. For instance, if I go out one day, I do something different, that it's something that makes my day better or my week even better. And I just feel different, like waking up and just going somewhere new, like to a new coffee, work from a coffee shop or something. That's really good because it's different for me. It's not like always the same thing. And we all know that remote work brings a lot of flexibility, but at the same time, it brings challenges, especially in maintaining mental well-being. Today, we're diving into the crucial topic of mental health, support for remote workers, and how can companies and individuals effectively support mental health in this unique environment? So let's explore these strategies to promote well-being and resilience.
Excellent. So before we dive into the psychological aspects, let's take a brief look at how working from home started. Remote work has been around for a while, but it really took off with the advent of the internet and modern communication tools. In the early days, it was mostly freelancers and entrepreneurs who worked from home. However, the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 accelerated this trend dramatically, pushing many companies to adopt remote work on a large scale almost overnight. This sudden shift has had significant implications for how we work and live. Jess, have you sought any mental health resources or support while working remotely? What has been helpful for you?
As for mental health support while working remotely, I've found it essential to prioritize my well-being. Personally, I've explored resources like virtual therapy sessions and mindfulness apps, which have been available in managing stress and maintaining health, work-life balance. Regular check-ins, for instance, with colleagues, or just setting clear boundaries between work and personal life, which could be really hard too, because we have deadlines and sometimes things happen and you have to finish your work. So life has also played a crucial role in fostering a positive remote work experience. Like, for instance, as I said, like, I think it was last episode, I am a really social person. So if I work all the time remotely, I could get stressed and I could be more anxious about things. For an example, I started going to the psychologist. Also, it's virtual, which I would love it to make it, like someone in presence, which it makes it different, But it has been helping me a lot just because the way that you tell your things, what's going on in your life, they give you a psychological perception or perspective about what you're living. So I think that's really important for me. Also, I think music makes a lot of impact in my life. That's something that I've been finding out lately. Like, if I put happy music to wake up, my day changes like drastically,
Yeah.
So I think that's something that helps me a lot. But I don't know if you have any personal experience that relates, or like what has been helpful for you if you get anxious or stressed, or if you're going through some hard times mentally related.
So I have like a similar experience. I suffer from anxiety. And anxiety is something I feel like it's developed, I think, in adult stages. Like, of course, you can see it already in your teenage years. But for me, given that I was more social before, now that I'm home and now that I'm more isolated, I really suffer from anxiety. I do go to therapy too, virtually, and I have the same feeling. I wish I could go to a session. But then again, remote work and remote environment for me is like my comfort zone right now. So honestly, it's been the way that I've been able to do that, because again, we have to keep in mind that therapy is still like a relatively recently accepted kind of practice. Still years ago, so you would tell someone you're going to therapy and they would be like, "Oh,
you're crazy."
Oh no, you're crazy. And it's like, now it's much more common. And it's actually, it's more common now after the pandemic, just like we were saying before. Now that mental health is a real topic of conversation and it's relevant. Now talking about these things and going to therapy is better seen. So it's been the way that I've seen. I found it more comfortable for me, but I do yearn maybe like going into physical sessions. But yeah, I go to therapy. I really take I limit the time that I work. I try to separate the spaces inside my home of what is my office space and what is the rest of my living space. Because when I used to work in different areas of the house, I used to have this issue that I would relate or I would feel at work all the time. So now that's something that I try to separate. I try to time block again. I am that kind of person that it's 6 p.m. and I'm like, yes, I am done for the day. Do not text me. Do not call me, because that's what's helped me maintain like boundaries between one thing and the other. And it also helps my anxiety because I have like a job that has a lot of pressure to it. So if I'm not able to separate that, it's going to be 10 p.m. and I'm still going to be talking and thinking about work. And I've noticed that the best thing that I can do for myself is separate, compartmentalize those things. So when I'm working, I'm working. And when I'm not working, don't even talk to me about it, because it's the best way that I can be efficient when I am working. So those are like maybe some of those things that I've done that have worked for me, and it's taken time for me to learn to do it.
Okay, so remote work, we know that can significantly impact work-life balance, often blurring the lines between professional responsibilities and personal life, as we were saying. And I'm glad you can separate those things. For some people, it could be really hard. Even for me, I accept it. It could be really hard sometimes. And a study by All Labs highlights that remote workers tend to work longer hours compared to their in-office counterparts. This fact increased the flexibility that can lead overworking and difficulty disconnecting from work. And Gabby, I wanted to ask you, how can remote workers address this lack of work-life balance? What strategies can help maintain a healthy balance?
Yeah. So again, going back to my personal experience, because I don't like we said at the beginning, we're no experts. What's worked for me, like I said before, is setting clear boundaries. Like establishing clear boundaries between work and personal life is essential. Like this includes defining specific work hours and sticking to them, as well as designating a dedicated workspace that is separate from areas to relax that you use usually to relax or to rest or to just do different things around your house. So that's worked for me. Using time tracking tools, honestly, that also works for me because it also lets me separate like the hours on the day that I'm working. I don't want to overwork also, because we know what that means. It's overburdening yourself. It causes burnout. Like it's just like on the long run, it's just not sustainable. So I utilize time tracking tools that can help me monitor my work hours effectively. And it allows me to identify patterns of overwork and ensure that I am allocating time for both work tasks and personal activities. That's been very helpful for me. Prioritizing self-care. I would also say that making time for self-care activities such as exercise, hobbies, and relaxation. I think it's crucial for maintaining overall well-being. Taking breaks throughout the day and scheduling regular downtime can also prevent burnout and improve productivity. Like this happens. I work 4 hours top and then I take an hour break. And then even in between, like if I have many sessions in the morning, like meetings specifically, which are very draining, I take even like little rest spaces in between. So that really works for me.
Necessary.
Something, and I feel like it's undermined a lot, is being able to communicate your expectations, which is having clear communication with your supervisors and colleagues about your availability and response times. It can help you manage expectations and reduce the pressure to always be online. So if you know that you're not going to be available at some point, tell your managers, tell your supervisors, and get to a point that you're all in understanding about each other's availability. So you don't have that pressure of them texting you out of work hours or when you're away, when you're busy doing something else, and vice versa. Like you're not bothering them either when they might be busy in other things. So I feel like those 4 points for me have worked. I think that by implementing these strategies, remote workers can better manage their work-life balance and create healthier and more sustainable remote work environments. Would you add something else to these strategies?
No, I think that's perfect. Like it summarizes everything, but I will really recommend people that don't know what to do, go to therapy. Just having someone to talk about your mental health and your problems. And even if you're stressed at work or if you have a personal issue, because that could distract you too. If
Oh,
you have
totally.
a problem with a friend or with a family member, if you go to therapy, these things will come really clear, like seeking a professional, but also doing everything that we have been researching and knowing that these things work are essential. So thank you for sharing that, Gabby.
Don't worry. I think that as remote workers, as remote work becomes more prevalent, the role of companies in supporting their employees also in mental health has become increasingly crucial. The transition to remote work can amplify feelings, like we said before, of isolation and stress and anxiety. So it's essential for companies to prioritize mental health initiatives. Today, we want to also explore the responsibilities that companies have in fostering a supportive environment for workers' well-being. So, Jess, what role do you think companies should play in supporting their remote employees' mental health?
I believe that companies have a really important role in supporting all of the remote employees, and not just remote employees, but we are talking about this because of the isolation and everything that remote work brings, you know? But I think that transitioning to remote work just can amplify these feelings of like blur boundaries between work and personal life. And so to mitigate these challenges, I think companies should prioritize in several things, like for instance, offering access to mental health resources. They could be also online, such a counseling service or just employee assistance programs that can provide essential support. I do think that regular check-in with employees through virtual meetings or one-on-one sessions that can also help maintain connections and just identify any emergency issues. If someone is really sad or if someone is presenting these symptoms, it's an alarm. Moreover, I think that promoting work-life balance by encouraging regular breaks, like we were saying, like you were saying that you have small breaks during the work. That's really important because it helps you focus you better. Just providing training on remote work best practices, including stress management techniques and maintaining healthy routines, can further empower employees to thrive in a remote environment. I think, for instance, something that I always do is try to get ready before work, like even putting makeup or just just having a cold shower or a hot shower if you prefer that. But for waking up, I prefer cold. So I don't know. And ultimately, I think that fostering a culture of open communication, like we were saying before about the expectations and just an empathy where mental health is destigmatized, that we were saying, and actively supported is essential for just creating this positive remote work experience. I think having these sessions with other teammates could be also really important just to know other coworkers better. But yeah, I think those are things, small things that can make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
But now imagine navigating the complexities of remote work through the lens of Pixar's Inside Out. Have you seen the movie?
I saw the first one.
It's really good, guys. If you haven't watched it, please do. Just Pixar, where we admire you for this movie. I love that movie. So this beloved film delves into the emotional landscape of its protagonist, Riley, as she copes with major life changes. Similarly, remote work presents its own set of emotional challenges, from managing isolation to maintaining motivation. So today we want to explore how these themes, and we want to show you some insights from Inside Out. How can they illuminate strategies for nurturing mental health and well-being in remote work environment? What are some common psychological challenges that remote workers face and how they can address them using these insights from Inside Out? What do you think, Gabby, that we can learn from this movie?
Yeah. So I like about Inside Out 1, the first movie, is how they present like the basic emotions of fear, anger, and everything. So if I had to look, if I had to think in my head, what are these little figures, these little characters that have appeared since I started working remotely? I would say like one of them is isolation or loneliness, however you want to call it. And this insight, I believe, from Inside Out that we can get is like the character sadness plays a crucial role in Ryla's emotional journey, showing that it's okay to acknowledge and express feelings of loneliness and sadness. Like you can't work on them unless you address them, unless you see them, you accept that you have them. So the way of addressing it is encouraging remote workers to recognize and accept feelings of loneliness. I think they can combat by scheduling regular virtual meetups, participating in online communities, and reaching out to colleagues for informal chats. I think it's very important that we acknowledge that a very big responsibility that companies have is that they're working with human resources. Like we're not machines.
Yeah.
So we need to acknowledge that that is a factor and it variates the results that we may have with our teams. So it's important to address that. I would also talk about lack of work-life balance, and my insight from Inside Out here would be Riley's emotional struggle. It highlights the importance of balance and the impact of external changes on her inner world. The moment that things change for her, the way that she sees and perceives everything around her changes. So we need to acknowledge also our workers have personal lives, and that could be impacted by what's happening in their personal lives. And we don't have to be meddling in their lives to try to solve their issues or anything, but we should be able to acknowledge that, right? So the way to address it is by having remote workers setting clear boundaries between work and personal life, encouraging that for remote workers, and using tools to track time spent on work tasks versus personal activities. I mean, individually, I think it can help maintain this balance. So, taking those regular breaks and a designated workspace can also contribute to a healthier work-life separation.
Yeah.
Another thing that I would mention is like motivation and productivity. And what we see on Inside Out is this character, Joy. She emphasizes the importance of staying positive and finding joy in daily activities.
I love her.
Yeah, I have my love-hate relationship with her because like they mentioned in the movie, like you can't always be happy.
Yeah, that's true.
But you have to stay positive even during challenging times. So the way to address it is, I think that remote workers can boost motivation by setting achievable goals, celebrating small wins, and finding joy in their tasks, which I feel is very important. Like you said at the beginning that what you struggle with is monotony. And the way to do that is to just make a special event about these activities that otherwise would be day-to-day things. Like try to make goals out of it. Try to celebrate your wins. Try to celebrate your achieved goals. I think that makes a difference because it's kind of like a way to save the day. It's a way to find the work that you're doing more satisfactory and more rewarding. So I would do that. I would utilize analytics tools specifically to track progress and productivity, so it can provide a sense of accomplishment and help identify areas of improvement. We've been doing this in the company that I currently work in. We're now more goal oriented. And every time that we achieve a goal, now you have that recognition. You receive that recognition of a job well done. Like if you were able to achieve it, even if you had setbacks, maybe it wasn't in the timeline that was initially expected, but the fact that you were able to complete this and that you really got it through it I think it's rewarding that and acknowledging that it makes a difference.
Satisfying.
Yeah, it's what we talked about in our last episode about emotional salaries. It's about not only focusing on the compensation, like the monetary compensation that you give your team, but also on the emotional compensation that you give them, which is having positive feedback.
Yeah.
Related to stress and anxiety, on Inside Out, we see the character Fear, who represents the natural response to what is uncertainty and stress. So from Fear, Riley learns to navigate those fears through understanding and through support. So how could we address it? How could companies address it? Is by having remote workers manage their stress and anxiety by practicing mindfulness, seeking support management techniques such as deep breathing, exercising, and techniques such as and analyzing patterns of stress through data can also help identify triggers and develop proactive strategies. So I feel like what we're talking about is you need a team. Like the company needs to be very aware of tracking these patterns so that they can recognize them and they can improve them if necessary. And you see them when people don't say things, they act them. What I've seen is that when you have an employee that's burnt out, you're going to see it in their performance. You're going to see a drop in their performance, a decline in motivation. They're not going to be so engaging during meetings. You're going to see that. But then again, you need to be able to register that. So that's a good way to address what is stress and anxiety, which can generate burnout and generate a whole set of different patterns and behaviors within your company. Lastly, when it comes to maybe communication barriers, what we learned from Inside Out, this movie highlights the importance of open communication and understanding between Riley and her parents, mirroring the need of effective communication in remote work. The moment that she shuts out her parents, she feels even more isolated. She feels even more lost. And now she doesn't have anyone to talk about these things because she moved to a new place.
Yeah.
She doesn't have any friends. She feels lost from her friends because I recently saw this movie again. And there's a part where she gets mad because her friend from where she lived before has a new friend and she feels left out. She feels replaced. So when you don't communicate those feelings and they're not validated either, you feel isolated. And then the way to address it, when it comes to the work environment, when you feel like something's not working for you or something, when maybe a supervisor, you don't like the way that they are managing a certain situation that you're involved in. If you're not able to communicate it, you're going to end up feeling isolated. What companies can do to address it is encourage transparent and frequent communication to help avoid those bridge gaps, those communication gaps, and then utilizing collaboration tools and regularly scheduled check-ins can enhance connection and clarity. And lastly, analyzing communication patterns can also help identify areas for improvement and ensure everything stays aligned. The moment that you see that one of your supervisees, they're going sort of MIA, they're not really so engaged as before, that's a trigger for you to analyze in a more detailed manner what can be happening, what could be the reason for that, and encourage more frequent communication, or maybe not more frequent, but still encourage efficient communication. So it works out better. So those are my insights. That's what I saw from Inside Out that I think that we can transfer to the work environments and what we feel and how we feel about work and how we react towards work. It really makes a difference because we are part of the environment. We can't say that the environment is made by itself. When you're in a toxic environment where you're not satisfied, you also need to analyze yourself and see how you're affecting or how you're impacting that environment to be what it is.
Yeah.
So I feel like that movie has a lot to reflect on. And Inside Out 2, and I'm spoiling myself, but in Inside Out 2, and I've seen a lot of memes, we see anxiety portrayed as a dynamic force in Riley's life, often overwhelming her during critical moments like this soccer scrimmage. However, the movie also illustrates a practical approach to managing anxiety by assigning it specific tasks, such as studying for a test, to harness its energy productively. How can remote workers adopt similar behavioral interventions to transform anxiety into a catalyst for achieving productive outcomes in their professional tasks? Yes.
From Inside Out too, I learned a lot, definitely. And I think I can relate that a little bit more because it could be the transition when you start to be older, like you start getting responsibilities and you start to focusing on the future. That's what the anxiety brings when you get to worry so much on the future. So, remote workers, I think that we all can apply these similar behavioral interventions to channel anxiety into productive outcomes by following these strategies, because there is a good way of channeling this anxiety. So I think first, it's identifying those triggers and patterns that recognize that specific situations or tasks that trigger you that anxiety, whether it's a looming deadline or just a challenging project, or just uncertainty about a performance, or just understanding these triggers will allow you, or would allow us as remote workers to be proactively managing our anxiety. Because as we said, it's a matter of working with it, you know? I think second will be breaking this task into manageable steps. Sometimes it's just even better having a step 1, step 2, step 3. And when I fulfill first step, then I can follow that second one, but also have that flexibility. I think that Riley's approach to studying for a test and Inside Out too, remote workers can break down daunting tasks into smaller achievable steps. Sorry. This approach will help you reduce overwhelm and provide you a clear path forward. And I'm really like something that makes me see Riley growing up. It's looking at her in the trying to be more disciplined because she wants to achieve something. So it's like, it's really nice to see that, a structured routine, no? And I think that establishing that daily, weekly routine also includes dedicated time for work, like tasks, breaks, self-care activities that we were talking about. Just provide that stability and predictability. Routine helps you managing the anxiety and fostering those sense of control over one's workload and environment. It's actually really important.
Yeah.
And I think this fourth step, also it's really important, and I love it. Just practicing mindfulness and relaxation routines. Like there's a part in Riley's Inside Out 2 movie, where she gets she has like a panic attack, like a stress attack. It's so hard, like her anxiety, it's really bad that she gets into a point where she can do anything. And I think this will help you control that. Is just incorporating mindfulness exercises, just like deep breathing techniques or just brief meditation sessions into daily routines. Even the music relaxes me a lot, so I recommend that. And just overall, just improving focus. These will help you improve focus. Also, like we were talking, just the clear goals. Like if we were saying, like if I have to define this task has a due date, try to work every day towards that goal so that I don't get into the last date and I haven't done anything, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just part of discipline too. I think it's a good roadmap for these needs, just to accomplish that. And like we were saying, utilize the support systems. Like even apps will help you track your time, or apps will help you having all of the tasks to get done during the week that you have to get it done. So I think that. And lastly, I think that seeking again, like a professional help will definitely make a difference. If you have a really bad case of anxiety. Also, in Inside Out, we see like a vivid portrayal of emotions. Like we were talking joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust. Disgust, we normally don't talk about that one, but it's actually really interesting to see that person like that character in the movie. And each one of them play a crucial role in Riley's life. So understanding these emotions, we know that can provide valuable insights for remote workers that are striving to manage their own well-being. So how can this emotional awareness help remote workers navigate the challenges of working from home?
Yeah. So again, and I've learned this through therapy, and self-awareness here is very important. I think that emotional awareness helps you recognize emotional triggers. It helps you understand when and why something is bothering you.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, and this may seem crazy, but when you look at it, sometimes you're mad and you don't even know why. Sometimes you're upset about something or you're anxious about something and you don't even know why you're anxious about it. What's giving you those feelings? So by recognizing emotional triggers, you can understand their own joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust. I think that you can identify like what are these situations at work that are generating stress, anxiety, and everything. So by just being able to recognize those, that's like we said before, like the first step to addressing them. Emotional awareness also helps you balance an emotional response. Provide a balanced emotional response. So just like we see with Riley, and how her emotions work together to navigate different situations, I feel like when you're working, you can learn to balance your emotions. For example, like acknowledge feelings of anger. By acknowledging feelings of anger or fear about a challenging task, it can help you address the underlying concerns and find constructive solutions. Like, sometimes I get very anxious about an outcome with my projects, with the things and the operations that I manage. So I have intrusive thoughts a lot of the time, and I'm always thinking about worst case scenarios. And then like something that my therapist told me at a certain point was like, okay, so worst case scenario happens. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And then like by looking at it realistically and saying, okay, what's the worst that can happen here? And then by managing and looking for solutions on how you would react to that, I feel it helps me and my intrusive thoughts and my anxiety manage on a realistic level the expectations. And then like when I even look at the conditioning, because I'm like, if this fails and this fails and this fails and this fails, that's the worst case scenario. I can then look realistically about those conditions. How real are they? Like, how viable is it that everything's going to fail and nothing's going to work and you're going to end up in this case? So that helps me. But by just like being able to recognize those situations that bother you and like really look into them and even think about them further in detail and analyze how they trigger you, it helps you create a response that's more realistic.
Definitely.
And I feel like that's very important. Also, I would talk about emotional awareness helps you improve your communication by being self-aware. You can not only understand your emotions, but it helps you also understand other people's emotions. The other day I was annoyed about something. I just had this feeling of annoyance. And then I remember my therapist, because my therapist also told me to look, to watch Inside Out, actually, because sometimes I have a little bit of issues talking about my feelings, or understanding my feelings. And that's where we're at right now. And she told me like, she gave me like this, table of emotions. It's like a spectrum of emotions. And it tells you like how each basic feeling generates subsecondary feelings. Like from anger, you find frustration, and frustration can also derive into annoyance. So I figured out why I was annoyed. Like I thought of it like, why am I annoyed by this? And then it helped me like think further, like, okay, if annoyance comes from frustration, what is frustrating me? Why do I find this situation frustrating? And then by finding it frustrating, then I understood that it not only annoyed me or frustrated me, but also it caused anger. which is, if you look at it, I won't say that it's a negative or positive emotion, but I would say it's like a low frequency emotion.
The reaction.
Yeah, they're visceral kind of emotions. And that's what anger is. That's what excitement is. That's what sadness is. They're visceral emotions. And they're never, when you're an adult, they're never as simple as just anger, just fear, just joy. Like they come in different presentations, like anxiety, like frustration, like annoyance. So by being able to just understand my feelings, I can now understand myself better, understand the position, and it helps me improve the way that I communicate with someone about what annoys me or what frustrates me or what angers me, because now I know exactly what my feelings are and what it's triggering it. And I can tell that person, and I can have more assertive communication like, hey, I didn't like how this made me feel. Or I didn't like this because it made me feel like this, and this. So can we maybe avoid that in the future? And you can't do that if you don't recognize what's triggering you. You can't do that if you can't figure out what's the best response to that situation. And you can't do that if you don't know how to communicate. So I feel like that's important. I would say emotional awareness also helps you manage stress and burnout, because it enables you to recognize signs of stress and burnout early on. This self-awareness allows you to be proactive and on taking steps and setting boundaries and taking breaks or seeking support to maintain mental well-being. And I recently also had that situation. I was very burnt out and I was not getting any less tasks. Things were not getting any easier. So I noticed that I needed to set those boundaries by myself on my own, because the dynamic of the work didn't allow me to have someone else double down on my tasks and my responsibilities. Like I had to make those boundaries, to set those boundaries myself.
Definitely.
So yeah, and it's helped me to manage my stress and my burnout. And you have to be aware enough, self-aware, to be able to do that on your own. Because if you're expecting if you're expecting other people to do that, it might never come, because again, people are in their own world, they're in their own responsibilities. And even if they want to be on the lookout, if you're not verbal about your needs, a lot of times people are going to overlook them. Lastly, I would say that emotional awareness, it enhances your adaptability, and it also helps you promote collaboration and team dynamics, because when you're self-aware and you're aware of other people's emotions, I feel like you can adapt better to their needs, and you can collaborate better, and you can improve communication. And even if something doesn't come out the way that you expected, or if a conversation doesn't go out the way that you intended, by being emotionally aware, you can know when to take things personally and when to not. And that helps you work with other people. So I feel like ultimately emotional awareness, what we see from inside out, it can help you empower your team and cultivate a healthier work from home experience by managing emotions effectively and fostering resilience and promoting overall well-being.
Yeah.
So that was a long response. That was a monologue.
But I like it. We can stay all afternoon talking about this, but
yeah,
we know time, it's also important. But I loved it. And I love talking about mental health and just learning more about psychology, and especially about Inside Out. We can learn from movies. That's great.
Yeah.
Just tell us in the comments if you guys learned something from this episode. We'll be really happy to get a little bit of, feedback from you guys. If you liked it, or what else would you like us to talk about?
Yeah. So yeah, with this, our episode has come to an end.
Thank you so much for joining us today in the Higher Hub. We hope you found these insights really helpful.
Like Jess said, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others. Stay tuned for more episodes.
Remember, this is Jess.
And this is Gabby. Until the next time.
Bye.
That wraps another episode of the Hired Hub podcast. We hope you found today's discussion empowering and insightful. Remember, success in the world of remote work is within your reach, and we're here to support you every step of the way.
Be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more expert advice and engaging conversations. Please give us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify to help us reach more people who can benefit from the Hired Hat podcast.